Now we will look at the concept of transformational grammar. Transformational grammar, according to Chomsky, can be explained in terms of a system of rules which is based on mathematical principle, that is, with the help of finite number of rules, infinite number of sentences are generated, and that's why transformational grammar is also known as transformational generative grammar. Now, there are three things that need to be understood. One is that this grammar provides the syntactic rules for the formation of sentences, and second is the ability or the capacity to generate infinite number of sentences based on the finite number of language or syntactic rules. And these rules of grammar give recursiveness, that is the capacity to be applied more than once in generating the structure. It is a very influential theory of grammar which has been proposed by Chomsky in late 1950s, and then also further work was done in 1957 and 65. Language and grammar from linguistic perspective, grammar is description of person's linguistic knowledge. Grammar is a formal device with finite set of rules that generates the sentences in any language. Now we will look at different points related to this theory. The number one is the evaluation of grammar. That refers to, if a grammar is a theory of language, then how do we evaluate how good a theory it is, especially when we are dealing with the transformational grammar. So we will look at it from the observational adequacy, descriptive adequacy, explanatory adequacy points of view. So the observational adequacy means that first the grammar must specify what is and what is not an acceptable sequence in the language. Now, this criterion referred to as observational adequacy, which applies at several levels of language. So, this particular adequacy deals with the specification of what is and what is not acceptable sequence in language. The descriptive adequacy deals with the grammar specification on the part of the grammar. That specification requires that grammar must specify the relationship between various sequences in the language. It is not enough for the grammar to make a sequence as permissible. It must also explain how it relates to other sentences that are similar in meaning, opposite in meaning, and so on. For example, if two sentences are similar in meaning but differ in syntax, the grammar should be able to explain this fact. The third is the explanatory adequacy. Now, this criteria, which is explanatory, is referring to requiring explanation. Chomsky points out that it is theoretically possible for a number of grammars, all based on different principles, to attain these two forms of adequacy. He suggests that the child learning a language is presented with samples of language and must determine the grammar from these samples. This also implies that certain innate language constraints enable the child to deduce the correct grammar. Then you have deep structure and surface structure. Deep structure is a part of the transformational grammar and conveys the underlying structure of a sentence that conveys the meaning of a sentence. Surface structure is the superficial arrangement of constituents and reflect the order in which the words are pronounced. Now, there are three arguments for usefulness of the distinction, which is the deep structure and surface structure. Now, three arguments for the usefulness of distinction is the deep structure ambiguity, underlying structure, and active versus passive. 3 arguments can be made for this usefulness. First, let's consider the sentence, which is, flying planes can be dangerous. Now, this sentence, flying plane can be dangerous. The sentence may be paraphrased roughly as, the act of flying planes can be dangerous, or planes that are flying can be dangerous. Now, this type of ambiguity called deep structure ambiguity. It comes from a single surface structure that is derived from 2 distinct deep structures. It cannot be explained by phrase structure rules. A second reason for the distinction is that some pairs of sentences are similar in their phrase structures, but not in their underlying structure. The third can be explained that other pairs are quite distinct in their surface arrangement, but similar in their deep structures. Transformation rules examples can be seen in the form of the fact that the particle movement transformation blocked with pronoun and passive transformation when these rules were placed under different studies and experimentations. Looking at few transformations which are related to the transformational rules, one is called particle movement transformation. Now, we know that the following 2 sentences, one is, John phoned up the woman, and second is, John phoned the woman up. These 2 mean the same thing. Now, the concern is the placement of the particle up, which is up. In these sentences, the particle may occur either just before or just after the noun phrase. The problem with this approach is that it lacks descriptive adequacy, that it does not reveal the similarity of 2 sentences. Then you have passive transformation. This is another one. It is considered as complex transformation and might be involved in the derivation of sentences. So you have the particle movement and the passive transformation as the transformational rules. They both vary, they both convey different meanings with their different syntactic features given in these syntactic structure of the sentences. Transformational grammar assumes that sentences have deep structure and surface structure. The deep structure is derived by a series of phrase structure rules, and the surface structure is derived from the deep structure by a series of transformational rules.